Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry I'm a little late tonight, but better late than never. And I am here with Tanner Lagasca from Actors Training Ground for our Field Trip Friday. And for this Field Trip Friday, we're not going that far because Tanner's in Raleigh. So, welcome. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And I think this will be fun. But before we get into Actors Training Ground,
Mhm.
and of course, if you have any questions on from YouTube or from Facebook, feel free to post them in the comments, and Tanner and I will get to them because we're going to really dive into the acting thing, the acting process. But before we get to Actors Training Ground, I would really like to talk to you about your background
Sure.
because
Sure.
I've never known anybody. I was obsessed with Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton. I
Right.
watched, I think, pretty much every episode. I loved that show. I thought he was a brilliant um, interviewer. I
Mhm.
aspire to be like him someday. But you graduated.
Right.
You received your MFA from the Actors Studio in New York, which is best known for that program. That program was a class.
Yes, that program was a class. So we would arrive at the theater around, I would say, 6 or 7. They would start filming it. We wouldn't finish filming until around 11:30, 12, or longer, depending on how long it went. You only saw the hour that he edited that episode. So you guys saw the truncated version of that class. But we were required to go to every taping, and we were encouraged to ask questions. And on the year that I went, I was there from 2000 and I want to say 2002 to 2005. So if you ever watch any of the inside of the actor studios during those time frame, you may see me asking a question, or you may see me in the audience as a young Tanner, just learning about acting. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. What I did learn.
What any really memorable interviews or memorable classes, because that was really your workshop into the acting process. That was
Yeah,
your training ground.
uh, you know, he had a lot of great guests on. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, I think he had John Travolta on once when I was on there. He had Barbara Streisand on, which was very amazing as well. And I mean, we're talking like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I don't really remember that many of the guests. I do have all the DVDs, though. They gave us all the DVDs so I can always watch. We had The Simpsons on. We had the cast of Will and Grace was on. That was great as well. I remember when we were doing. I remember when we were filming for Simpsons, and Julie Kavner, who did the voice for Marge Simpson. Whenever she would speak as Marge, she would put a placard in front of her face with Marge's picture because she didn't want her face to be associated with the character that she was portraying. I found that very interesting. That's how she approached it. Like, this is my character, so I'm going to wear a face, so that way when I'm me as normal, it's Julie, and then when it's me as Marge, you can tell the difference. I thought that was interesting. Really great people were on the guests. Toward the end, I started going because personally, there were guests on that I felt like I would not learn from. And that's one thing I think is very important that actors need to understand, is that just because someone is famous does not mean you are going to learn from them, right? And so, like, I remember when he had J-Lo on, and I said, I am not going to go and sit there for 5 hours listening to J-Lo talk about acting when I have seen some of her clips from her movies and I'm not impressed by that. So why am I going to go? What am I going to learn from her? So toward the end of our time there, 2005, I started kind of picking and choosing, and we were also on our graduate level. We were doing our theses and all that stuff. So we couldn't always make it to some of the classes because we were rehearsing, But that's when I started to pick and choose which ones I want to go to really learn about the craft of acting.
So you have worked and taught all over the world once you graduated, including South Korea, where
Yep.
you created a training program. And I know when we spoke as kind of our pre-interview, you talked to me about what a fabulous experience that was. So talk to me about teaching acting to high school teachers and middle school teachers
Yeah.
in South Korea.
So, well, South Korea, they are fascinated and they love Westerners. And when I say Westerners, I mean anyone who speaks English or is from an English speaking country such as Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, and America, of course, obviously. They're fascinated by that and they love it. And so they have this program. It's an English Village. It's in Paju, about maybe 2 miles south of the DMZ. We are pretty close to the DMZ. I never was scared for my life, though. I was never worried about, something's going to happen to me. But you could hear the military practicing, away from us in the early morning hours. But I loved it so much. And so they have this theater program where they have 16 to 18, what they're called edutainers. We are edutainers. And so we would write our own musicals. We would create our own game shows all around the themes that the English Village wanted us to have for those 3 months. They're broken up into 3 months for the seasons. And so we'd make game shows and we'd write our own musicals. And oh my God, it was so much fun. The kids have a great time. Now, they're mostly for kids aged anywhere from 6 up to high school. And then, of course, their teachers were there too. But we were in the entertainment aspect. So we were more of teaching you to understand English through the application of a play or through the application of a game show. But we would never actually speak in Korean ever. We were not allowed to be honest. We were told that if we did, you wouldn't get punished, but it was not looked upon nicely. So there's a lot of charades going on with the guests, like you walk, you walk there, trying to get them to understand what to do. But during that time, I had introduced the idea of doing a 3-week training program for non-native English-speaking teachers, and they would come in. They were either from anywhere from grade school, grammar school, up to high school, and they would come in for 3 weeks, and they would take classes on acting and singing and movement and dance, and they would rehearse a show and learn how to direct. And then they were all split into groups, and each group got roughly 10 to 15 minutes on stage. So we did either Wizard of Oz or we did Cinderella. And we would basically just do the entire, a truncated version of it, like an hour and 10-minute long version of it. But it went from start to finish, and then each group would just continue the play. They'd have on their own costumes and then continue on. And it was I loved that program because not only were they being taught how to act and move on stage and this whole new animal of performing, but then they got to do it. They got to actually participate in it and know what that felt like as well. And at the end of the program, it happened every time. They come in, they were scared, they were nervous, they couldn't speak English, they were really, like, oh. And at the end, they're like, oh, we don't want to leave. We want to stay. We loved it. We had so much fun. And we just created so many bonds. And it was really a wonderful experience. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's still going on to this day, that program.
How wonderful. Well, South Korea during this pandemic, that's one of the few places in the world where I think theaters shut down for maybe a week or two. It was not very long, and they've had theaters. Wicked is playing there now. Phantom of the Opera was playing towards the beginning of the pandemic, and a lot of theaters were using that Phantom of the Opera model as what reopening might look like here. What could we learn from the South Korean people, from the audiences there, as we inch closer to reopening our theaters here?
Well, I will say that I left in 2010. So I left 10 years before they had the pandemic. Now, I have seen theater there. There were a couple of shows that I saw, and the audiences are very different than they are in America.
How so?
Well, when we would sing a song, when we would get into a song or singing for our musical or whatever, and everyone would clap along. They like to clap along. So they all clap along, and they're all like moving in their chairs, which is something that we don't do here in America. We don't really clap along and try to sing along with people, or whatever. So that's one thing. But they are very generous, and they are respectful. Like, not we're not, but they are very respectful when it comes to watching a show. I saw two shows there that the audiences loved. One was Evil Dead the musical. It shocked me that the South Koreans would like that. I don't know why, but I just thought that it was such an American, Resident Evil,
Mm-hmm.
Evil Dead, like such an
Yeah.
American iconic TV movie, a horror movie. I didn't think it would translate very well over in South Korea, but it did. They loved it. They were just they were all over it. They had front seats so they can get the blood splattered on them, and it was like, oh my, they just loved it. And then the other one I saw was Slava, which was a mime type exploration with trapeze artists and juggling and a lot of lights and very in your face, very like audience engaging. Like the audience felt like we were part of it. And that's what we would do, is we would go see shows and then say to ourselves, well, how can we configure the shows that we write for English Village? How can we incorporate things that people are doing in theater for South Korea so that we can make the audience more engaged, or that we can like really make them feel included, And so we learned a lot from shows that were brought to South Korea, and how the South Korean audiences responded to those shows, and we would try to do that with our shows as well.
So talk about, so you grew up, I think when we spoke, you grew up on the West Coast of the United States.
Yes.
Went to school in Chicago, then went to New York, and somehow in the middle of all this, you ended up in Raleigh. So how did you end up in Raleigh? What were you thinking?
What was I thinking? That's what I want to say. If I could go back 10 years, I'd say to myself, Tanner, what are you thinking? But no, I mean, there's always good and bad with whatever choice you make. You never know, when you're making a life choice like that. And so when I was leaving, I was on my way out of South Korea. I had been there 3 years. I had just stepped down as the artistic director, and I was planning on staying longer, but then I realized that stepping down and then just being a normal edutainer, no longer being in charge of the program, it made me not want to be there anymore, because I wanted to say and how the program that I started would continue. And so at that point, I said, well, let me go start thinking about my future. And so I figured out how much money I would have had from retirement, because the South Korean government is wonderful to Westerners. They have a retirement plan, whatever, I forget what they call it exactly, but whatever you made for retirement, the English Village would actually match it, so you got double back. So I was there for 3 years. I had some money saved, not a lot, but I knew that wherever I went, that would be where I was going to be, because I would be able to have this money again. And so I had looked at LA, I had looked at Chicago, I looked at Florida, and I looked at Chicago. I think I said Chicago as well. And, then a friend of mine said, have you looked at Raleigh? Have you thought about Raleigh? And I was like, well, no. Why would I want to go to Raleigh? And they're like, well, there's the big theater scene here. There's a big film, the film happening all over in Wilmington and Charlotte and all that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did some research and said, well, there is a lot of theater there. And, I'm an acting coach. I like acting. I mean, they might benefit from me. I came in thinking that like it was, small city, this is a big city person. with a small, not clearly thinking, obviously. And I said to myself, oh, it's probably, they don't have a lot of acting coaches there or whatever. Well, I was wrong on that. But so I did some research. Like I said, I did some research, and then I found a place there, and I basically left South Korea in October, in the end of September. I got to New York. I packed or New Jersey, where I was living, packed all my stuff there. Then I traveled down, found a place to live, traveled back, packed all my stuff in my car, and drove everything down here and moved to Raleigh. So that's how I kind of ended up here. It was not really where I would expect to end up being, but it's here where I am, and I'm making the best of it. But it's a very difficult thing, Lauren, to move into an area where there are no connections, where you don't have high school connections or grammar school connections or even college connections. You're basically starting out on your own from ground zero, not knowing a single person, and trying to, get your name out there, to try to, to be seen, because no one knew who I was, no matter how much experience I did have in the past. I'm just plain off the street. Here I am. Hi, everyone. Well, I'm in Raleigh now.
And it's really interesting. I think so many people end up here and don't have a network of people. We did, when I moved from Miami, we didn't know anybody. And I remember being at the park playing with my son, and this woman came up to me and invited me to a scrapbooking party. And I came home and I said to my husband, I said, I'm going to a scrapbooking party. And he said, what's that? I was like, I have no idea, but she's a person that I don't know. And so I'm going to go and see what this is. And so that was like my entry into North Carolina. But scrapbooking. Yes. It didn't last long, but I met a lot of, in fact, Kim, who is my business partner, who I work with now with RDU on Stage, it was one of those scrapbooking friends that I made, who just happened to love theater too. So kind of funny, but I think a lot of us end up here without a net.
Well, I definitely hit without net, and I actually came at the worst possible time, because apparently we were in a recession at that time, and I remember that I just got here in October of 2010, and I remember that everything was kind of like, people were not spending money as much, and I hadn't started Actor Training Ground back then anyway. I was still just Tanner Lagasca, actor, working at a couple of theaters here to, teach with them for a while. And that's when things started heading south a little bit. With the next 2 years, we lost, the film incentives. And so I saw a lot of potential business, later on kind of go, because of what was happening around the Raleigh area, because of the recession, and then of course the film incentives that lost.
You're a member of SAG-AFTRA. You recently got cast in a movie, so that's very exciting. Congratulations on that. But one thing I've heard from a lot of equity and SAG actors living here in the Triangle, particularly equity actors, is that it's really hard to book a gig here. That unless you are in New York, even if you're here, that you kind of have to travel to other places to get the jobs, even if the jobs are here. So why is that? Why is that?
There is a good reason. Well, I don't know. I cannot speak for AEA, which is the American Equity Association, because I do not belong to them. I'm only SAG-AFTRA, so I can only speak from SAG-AFTRA's point of view. And that is that the reason why it's a little harder for AEA, because there are not a lot of AEA houses here in Raleigh. Okay. And so a lot of community theaters don't pay enough that would warrant a person who is working in a right to work state take a job that's not going to pay a lot of money. It doesn't make sense. There's a lot more film opportunity. Again, you're not being paid, but because North Carolina is a right to work state, they may not look well upon it, but you are allowed to do shows or films for independent films in a right to work state, because that's the give for living here. So when we join SAG, it's a lot cheaper because we're living in North Carolina. If I were to do a show, though, let's say that I audition in New York, I audition here with my agent, and I get a job, let's say in New York, and they say, oh, we're going to film in New York, it's going to be great. And I'm like, yay. I cannot step foot on that set in New York until I have paid all my dues that are due for being a full member, meaning I paid everything. But as long as I work in a right to work state, then my fees won't go up. I can do a show in Georgia. I can do a show. I think Louisiana is also a right to work state. I can do a show here. I think Florida is the same way. So as long as you're in a right to work state, you can do that without having to pay the full price of the SAG-AFTRA membership. I know it's a lot of money, but I think what we pay is about half. So we pay half of what we would normally pay if it was in a normal state like California or New York or Chicago or something like that. But that's why.
Does it pay? Let me ask you this. Does it pay if you are living here, working here, and that's your intent to become a member of SAG-AFTRA or AEA, do you think?
You know, I personally think that you don't have to join the union if you don't have to, especially when you're working here in Raleigh or any right to work state, because one of the provisions is that they have to hire non-union actors in a union film because you're working in a right to work state. Now, does that mean that they do that? Not necessarily, because sometimes what they'll do is they may say, okay, I really want to just hire equity actors, but I know that I have to be open to taking non-equity. So they may have auditions and saying it's an equity film, but you don't have to be equity to be in it. But what they're not telling you is, hey, we're not going to probably hire you, but they need to have some non-equity, and it's provided that we're supposed to have some non-equity. So you don't have to join if you don't need to. The reason why I joined was not because, hey, I'm getting all this work now and I want to guarantee that kind of work. I did it basically to try to give myself a little bit of clout with Actors Training Ground, and I felt if I was a member of SAG-AFTRA, that people would know that I take it seriously, that I'm very, I'm a professional, that I want the best with everyone that I'm teaching or training. And so that's why I joined SAG-AFTRA. I could have joined 7 years ago, to be honest. I did a SAG commercial 9 years ago. Wow, okay. 9 years ago I did that. And what was interesting was I could have joined then. And I said, no, I'm not going to join yet. I said, I don't need to join right now. It's nice to know that I'm eligible forever. And they can't take that away from me. It wasn't like a voucher to where it would expire after a certain number of months. I was Taft-Hartley'd in, which means that I am basically a member of SAG and can join whenever I wanted. And it wasn't until 2 years ago or 3 years ago that I did that jump and decided, okay, I'm going to do it solely for the purpose of, like I said, giving some clout to Actors Training Ground, so I wasn't just another wannabe acting studio or wannabe actor. I was someone who is showing you this is someone who takes it seriously.
So you've created the Actors Training Ground here in Raleigh, and this is really to give local actors and performers the skills to audition and truly succeed in this business. When you and I spoke in prepping for this interview, you told me that you've had some success. We've talked about your success in South Korea. You've had success with some commercials and acting work on stage. But you also know firsthand what it's like to be a struggling actor. So, what are some of the lessons you hope to impart to your students from your successes, and maybe even the not successes? I don't even want to say failures, because failures is like such a strong word, but
It is,
you
but
know,
well, I say, we don't like to think of us as failures because you failed at something. It's like we always think, well, that opportunity didn't arise the way I wanted it to, and we always. I don't think I would say failure. I say we learn from the risks we take. We learn from our mistakes. That's what
yes.
actors do. That's how we grow. If if you're expecting to be perfect on stage every time, you are going to set yourself up to fail because no one is perfect anytime. There's always something that's going to go wrong, and we get through it. And sometimes we skate through it perfectly, and we're like, wow, I can't believe I got through that show with all that happening around me. Other times you're like, oh, I cannot believe oh my God, right? But we can't dwell on those facts. And so for me, the biggest thing, I think there's so many that I could say, but the thing that we have to remember as actors is that we are human, and that also we are not the end all be all. We are not the epitome of a show, whether it's a film, whether it's a production. The actor is the lowest common denominator. We are the entity that can be replaced at any time. If we have a bad attitude, if we have a overconfident, cocky attitude, or if we're lazy, if we are disrespectful to people, depending on the director, depending on the company, depending on other factors, they can get rid of you because there are 100 other actors who auditioned for that show. Whether or not it's paid, whether or not it's for community theater, that doesn't matter. You should still treat every show and every person involved in that show and every audience member in that audience with the same respect that you would want someone to give you, right? And I think a lot of actors don't do that. I think, well, I don't want to say a lot of actors. I don't want to pigeonhole anyone in saying that. I'm just saying there are some actors who think that they are the end all be all, that I am the epitome of acting, and they act like that. And it's people like that I don't want to work with on stage. I mean, there are some wonderful actors in this area who I'm friends with, who are brilliant, who are talented, who are the most easygoing, just down-to-earth people. And that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to instill in my students is you can be yourself, you can be true to yourself, but you don't have to be jerks about it, right? And if you approach acting as a business and not just as a quick way to make money, because that's not, if you're entering the business to make money, please go somewhere else, because you're not.
Yeah.
There's always someone out there saying, oh, they say that, but it's not really true. Well, no, it is true. It is true. Okay. I mean, I've been in this business for over 40 years. Okay. And while I have had my shares of successes and my shares of, as you had said, my failures, I mean, I'm still plugging along, but it's that passion and that drive and that love for acting that just keeps me going. It's not like, oh, I'm going to get money. And no, I don't know when I'm going to make any kind of residuals or financial gains from my acting right now. Will it happen someday? Possibly. I do not know. But I'm not going to, same time, I don't discount that either. I've paid my dues. No one may know it in Raleigh, but I have paid my dues throughout my career, starting in California, moving to Chicago, New York, now South Korea, and now here. So it's not like I just stepped off the acting boat and I'm like, hey, right? And so when I'm teaching my classes, I try to get people just to sort of tap into who they are, find out who they are as an actor. And it really does, my classes do show you who you are, because you will learn if you have the time and the energy to do the work that is needed when it comes to acting. It's not just learning a monologue and then getting up there and, whoo, I got it. There's so much work that goes behind it. And I think that people don't realize that. I think they think it's going to be fun and easy and all that, when it really isn't. You know, you have to do the work, and there is no other way around it. There is no shortcut. Yeah.
And I think, what you're speaking to is, we live in this YouTube generation where everyone is becoming a Disney star. You make a couple of YouTube videos and you're all of a sudden a reality star and you're on Disney Channel. And so I think people perceive that it's easy because we're in this quick fix generation, but it's not a quick fix. It's you're playing for the long game. You're not playing for just the YouTube audience.
Well, the thing is, YouTube and acting are two different things, right? And the thing is, a lot of times Disney or other major production places see someone has a big following and says, well, yeah, they have a big following. Why don't we tap them? And then that following will be part of Disney. See, that's why they're taking this person. It's because they have a huge following behind them. They could not have any talent at all. I'm assuming they do, since they're being hired by these people. But, like a lot of times there isn't that. People, when they realize how much work goes into acting, that's when things start kind of like separating. That's when the cream starts getting separated from the milk, right? Because it's like, okay, these people who want to do the work, I'll do the work. I don't want to do the work. They're the ones who usually leave my classes. They're the first ones to leave my class because they go, oh, I have to do work?
This is hard.
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah. And I'm like, I know it's hard. I mean, acting is hard. People say, the people who say, oh, yeah, acting is easy, right? That's because I always tell them, you are seeing the result of someone's 2-month work of research and line memorization and character development and scoring of what do you call it? Scoring of your script, working with relationships within the play itself, developing relationships with the other actors, the director. And then you go and you see the movie, or you go and see the play, and you see the final result and go, well, that's just easy. Right. We make it look easy. We make the hard work look easy. And all you're seeing is the final result of that work that we did. And if you were to see me on stage and then say, oh, I loved how Tanner did that character Bob from, The Mystery of Bob, I'm going to do that character, and you do it just like I did it, all you're doing is copying the result of my hard work, but you have no idea why that character got to where they got, or even any of the decisions that I made on that character of why they are doing or saying what they're doing or saying. Even though it's written there in the script, I still have to know why I'm saying it. I'm not just saying the words. There's got to be a reason behind it, right?
Absolutely. And you've written a book. We should mention the book.
I actually have it here. I made sure I had it next to me so I could show it to you guys. But there it is. It's the Portable Acting Coach 3.0. There you go.
And a lot of the lessons that you're teaching in person are supplemented by what's in the book, correct?
Yes. So that book actually came about in 2013. I was at home. I was really kind of like going, I don't know what to do right now with my life. I think I was just starting Actors Training Ground at that point with some scene study classes or something like that. And I remember I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take all my notes from school because I'm tired of searching through them, and I'll just make one long electronic document, and then I can just search for something if I have to find it. So I started off like that. And then as I started doing that, I said to myself, this would make a really good book. And so I quickly turned it into, instead of just a bunch of notes,
Notes.
turned it into chapters, into sections. And so all my notes that I took when I was in conservatory and undergrad and grad school, and then everything that I learned along the way until 2013, I put into that book. And it took about a year and a half to do, roughly. And then I published it in 2013, and then this year, last year, 2020, I had updated it with a few more chapters and a couple of other sections, and so I revamped it to make it 3.0, and so now it has a new published date of I believe May 2020. But yes, everything that I teach in my classes is from my book.
Is in there.
Yeah.
How has COVID, I mean, this has been a crazy year. How has COVID impacted your business as a teaching artist?
Well, people don't like online classes. I will say that right now, especially when it comes to acting. And that is what has been the biggest hurdle, is trying to convince people that you're still going to get the same training, the same personality, the same type of energy in the class online, only it's going to be not in person. That's been the hardest, trying to get people, convince them that classes are still okay to take online. I mean, is it the best? No, it's not the best way to teach acting classes, but if I had a choice of either no class at all whatsoever or teaching online, then I'm going to teach online and do the best I can. I've had people who've taken my in-person classes as well as has taken my online classes, and they say they are almost identical, except that I'm not in the room with you. And that is the one thing that I do miss. The one thing I do miss is being in the room with the people, standing up with them when they're trying to do something, and say, I'm here with you, I'm going to do it with you, so that you don't feel so self-conscious. And so there's a difference when someone is next to you on stage working with you than if I'm helping you right now through your Zoom. Yes, I'm still here, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Right? But I try to incorporate everything that I incorporate in my classes in person that I can do online. So that's something that, it's been it's been a struggle, and it's been a challenge. And, sometimes I've had great enrollment in classes, other times not so much, and it's hard to gauge, because I don't know if it's because I'm offering classes that are not interesting to people, or if it's the quarantine that we had for the past year and 3 months or so. So, it's really hard to gauge what's working or not working. But I will say that we had a wonderful session in January, February, March of this year. We had some great classes. We had a voiceover class with Wendy Zier. That went great. We had some really wonderful special guests pop up. Video game artists and audiobook artists and a director and a casting director. She knew people, and she's like, hey, can they come and speak? And I was like, sure. And they would come in and speak for the hour, and it was great. And so that was wonderful. I started doing teen classes as well. Those are on Thursdays. So so while it has been a challenge, we've had some great successes as well. And I still have people coming back. I still have them, even though it's been online, I still have people signing up for classes still. So something is being done right if they're still coming back after being online.
After this.
Yeah.
Biggest mistakes you've seen actors make, either in the audition or on the job?
Some of the biggest mistakes I've seen. Well, one is someone who comes in, and I know this can sound so funny, but someone who comes in too prepared, where everything is orchestrated and maneuvered. Like, I'm always going to move my hand on this word and I'm going to stand on that line. I'm always going to go up on this word and go down on that word. Look, I'm all about using our voice and our body to express the character naturally, organically, making it. I always say it's character driven, not actor driven. We want to be sure the character is driving the character, not the actor, right? And so, but if you prepare too much, where it looks like it's manipulated and orchestrated, then we lose that honest, genuine person who this character is, right? They over prepared it. They want it to be perfect. Well, you know what? But life isn't perfect. And sometimes we want to see that imperfection in that character. I'm not saying that we want to see you stumble over your lines or, do awkward movements on stage because you're not, well, no. But we want everything to feel organic and natural, like that character is living in that moment. And so over preparedness, I think, and under preparedness both go hand in hand. Where someone says, "Oh, I'll just spend, like, I got a monologue. I'll spend one day memorizing it. I'll block it next day, and then Wednesday I'll perform it for my audition." That's too soon. No. Like that, you didn't give enough time for your character to develop, to figure out who they are and what they're doing, where they are in the scene or in this monologue. Usually I would say about a week to 2 weeks is what it would take to get a nice monologue ready for an audition. Now, there are those who we don't have time, or we want to pick a new monologue because the monologues we have are not appropriate for the show that we're auditioning for in a week. Okay, then you will have to make concessions, obviously, and have to do something and create a character. But I'm saying it shouldn't be something that we we should not try to rush the process, right? So that's one mistake. Another mistake I've seen actors make in a rehearsal, especially in rehearsal, is giving another actor notes, or thinking you, the actor, know more than the director. Hopefully you will work with a director that is willing to hear your ideas about your character, and you will hear their ideas, and hopefully you will combine together and come up with this character that is wonderful. But being an actor who says, "Hey, you know what? I've already got my character developed, so nothing you say is going to make me change that." That's bad, because that shows that you are unwilling, or you are not flexible as an actor, that you cannot let your character continue to grow and evolve, right? Our characters continue to grow and evolve from the moment we first do that read through, the initial read through and table read, until closing night. And I said closing night, not opening night. Closing night. That is when we have done all that work with our character and did everything we could, because we should always be discovering something new about our character. Anything. Something new.
Love that.
And that happens up until that final curtain call, when it's show over, break the set down, time to go home. That's when you're done, right? And a lot of actors think that, oh, once the show is opened, I'm done. Now it's just smooth sailing. Now it's just me doing the character. And yes, that is in a sense true. I mean, you have opened, you are no longer rehearsing the show, but that doesn't mean that you've stopped discovering and evolving that character. And those are some of the mistakes I make. I see actors making, young actors. And I say young, I mean young in the business, not young in age, because you could be young in the business and be 45 years old, but still not know anything. So I say young, I don't want people thinking that I'm saying young actor as an age. I mean young in the business.
Right.
And then of course, if the director says be off book by this date, then be off book by that date. Don't give excuses. when you're getting notes, you'll hear everyone say that. I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard people say this. Say yes, thank you, and then move on with the note from a director. Don't give the excuse of why you didn't do it that way. If you absolutely have to, wait till after notes are given, everyone's going home. Then walk up to the director and say, just so you know, I took your note, but the reason why it happened today was if you feel like you have to. But
Right.
at the end of the day, the note was given. Just take the note, right? Take the note, make the adjustment, and move on. That's what the note is there for, right? It's to make it's the director is the eyes, right?
Yeah.
The director is not there to tell you what to do. The director is there to shape what is being done. So if he sees something that you're doing on stage and loves it, he's not going to say anything, but he might go, "Oh, Lauren, I loved what you did there. Would you just hold that moment out 2 more beats?"
Yeah.
Got it. Right now, you know it has to happen, and I go, beautiful. Right, it worked. It wasn't me telling you I want you to do it like this, and I want you, like that. You are going to meet directors who are like that, but generally, a director is there to take what the actor is giving them, and then shape that into something that can tell the story that the director wants to tell.
So, what is next for Actors Training Ground?
What's next for Actors Training Ground? Thousands of people registering for classes. That's what's happening next with Actors Training Ground, right? That's my hope, my dream. No, in all seriousness, we do have our fall session, our spring session starting in about 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks. I think it begins March 28th, which is a Sunday. We have classes on Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So we have a voiceover class. We have a acting 1, audition technique, voice for the actor, acting 2, character development. We have an improvisation class in person at Pure Life Theater being taught by Rebecca Jackson Artists. And then I will be doing an in-person acting 1 class. I will not be there the first week. Something came up, so I will be having David Henderson. I'm waiting to hear back from him. So he may be hosting or helping me out for my first night of classes on the 29th of March. Then I have some teen classes, the acting 1 and audition technique for teens. And on Wednesday, like I said, I have a voiceover class with Wendy Zier. That's going to be from 6 to 7:30. And then I have something that is completely new to Actors Training Ground. I hope we can get people in it because I think it's something that's not offered here in Raleigh. And I'm all about offering new acting ideas for classes that are not typical. But Sam Corey is going to be teaching a styles of performance. And so where she's going to go through presentational and non-presentational performances. So she's going to start with clowning and then farce, Elizabethan, and end with realism to show the different ways of presenting styles on stage when acting. So
Very
that's
nice.
something that people don't really think about when it comes to acting. They think about realism only, but there's more to acting than just realism. And if any of your fans out there watched WandaVision, Elizabeth Olsen, who played Wanda in that, had an interview and she talked about how challenging it was for her to do those episodes because every episode focused on a different decade, and each decade had a different way of acting for television. And so you see that happen in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and 2010s, right? Well, she had training in school on different styles of acting, with farce and melodrama and all that. And all of that came into play when she was doing these episodes. So don't think that just because it's an old-fashioned type of style, such as farce, well, that's not really old-fashioned, but melodrama or farce, that you'll never ever use those type of things when you're acting. You will. And this class is going to be a great class to get you introduced into that and understand that and add another dimension to you as an actor. because you never know when you might want to, you're doing something realistic and go, you know what though? I want to throw something farcical in there for a reason. I know the reason why I'm going to do it. It becomes a choice. It becomes, that's why I'm doing it. Not just, oh, it'll be funny. That's why I'm doing it. Right. That's not why you make choices as an actor. You make them to help push that character along in their own journey, you know?
So, people who want to find Actors Training Ground, they can go to the website and find the schedule, learn how to register, follow you on Facebook, find your social media. It's actorstrainingground.com. You can see it at the bottom of your screen. I will put the link when I repost this video later as well. I never do this, but I feel like I kind of have to. Jesse Gephardt has done a few interviews for RDU on Stage during this pandemic, and he usually does this, but I don't know. I feel like because you and James Lipton are BFFs, and I'm just going to go with that, even though he's gone now.
Oh, I could tell you I could tell you a really funny James Lipton story. I will tell you sometime. I can't tell you on here because I don't know if people will be upset over the story I tell. But
okay. We don't want to disparage his memory. We'll talk off camera on that. But
he was great though. Yeah.
In his honor, I'm going to ask you the 10 questions because
yay.
We got to do it. So what's your favorite word?
My favorite word?
Word, yes.
My favorite word. Hope. Hope.
What's your least favorite word?
Racism.
What turns you on?
Really good spicy food.
What turns you off?
Egotistical people.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound. I have two, but they go hand in hand. I love the sound of applause and laughter.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Just generally speaking, sadness.
What's your favorite curse word?
Cocksucker.
This must be a generational thing because my daughter would tell you that's my favorite curse word too. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
If I would have to say, if we go away from theater entertainment altogether, I think it would be graphic design. I'd love to do graphic design.
What profession would you not like to do?
Anything that requires manual labor.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
5 Mystic Places, Mr. Lagasca.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. In the 200 plus episodes that I've done, I think I've only done that once. And it was to turn the tables on Jesse, who was doing that to all the people he was interviewing. So thank you for letting me live out my James Lipton dreams here.
It's funny, Lauren, is I do that in my interview with Backstage with Actors Training Ground. My last 5 to 10 minutes is me doing a hybrid of his questions and my questions. So I wasn't even expecting that today. And when you said, I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. I do it to my interviewees all the time, and now it got turned on me. It was awesome though. It was very
See, we have to turn the tables, got to keep you on your toes. But
you
look
have
at the
to.
legacy Mr. Lipton or Professor Lipton left all of us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what was really impressive about Dean Lipton that I gotta say is I never knew this about him, but he did his own research on every guest. Like he is the one who came up with all those questions. He didn't have anyone helping him, and he edited every episode. Every episode. That was amazing to me. And that was the first time that I was introduced to editing
Mhm.
and the idea of interviewing. And, so he did influence me in that way when it came around last year that I was going to start doing interviews with backstage with Actors Training Ground.
Mm.
So yeah, he was definitely, he put his heart and soul inside the actor studio. And I would not have wanted to be anywhere else for those 3 years. I will honestly say that. It was great.
Well, you could tell it was a great program to watch as a viewer on television, and I remember watching it thinking, what a class this would be
Yeah.
to take. So it has definitely stuck with me and has informed how I've approached my own editing, my own interviewing, because I think the way he approached his interviews was with such respect and integrity, and it really showed. So
Yeah.
but this was fun. Thank you for hanging out with me on a Friday night.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I look forward to possibly doing it again in the future.
Yes. And thank you all for watching tonight. This weekend, our DU on Stage is going away a little bit. Our DU on Stage is becoming Beltline to Broadway. If you've been following us on social media, you know that we're kind of making this transition because if you live here, we have some fabulous actors here. The road between what's happening in Raleigh theatrically and what's happening in New York and some other places is pretty exciting. And so we're rebranding. So keep watching, and I will see everyone next week. Tanner, stay safe and healthy, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Everyone, have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.